Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick here for another Friday morning GM with co-host Vas Laricos. Vas, how you doing?
Doing well, Ken. Doing well. Weather's starting to feel like football season today on this Thursday as we record on the 21st. Looking forward to seeing how this final 53 comes into shape, and really looking forward to the regular season. It's close now.
Yeah, me very much as well. And not only is it close, but there's not a lot of time between the preseason game on Saturday at noon and roster cutdown day on Tuesday to have a roster projection. So this show is going to be our final roster projection for Film Study, and I'm very appropriately doing that with Vas. We've had a couple of stops along the way to get here with Spencer Peterson doing a good episode on that. But I thought this is really the ideal time for us to do it.
Absolutely. A couple balls, moving parts in the air. I'll probably gain a little clarification as week 3 of the preseason transpires, but I think we can make a pretty good guesstimate of the direction the team's leaning at this point.
Right. I agree with you on that. Well, let's start at the quarterback position. Any doubt about 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks being kept with
No, I mean, if Leary had put on a show in the preseason, I think there might have been some inkling of an idea to keep 3, but I think it's stone cold lock that the 2 quarterbacks, obviously Lamar Jackson and Cooper Rush. And I guess we should also note at this point, Lamar did not practice today with a mysterious. At first, it was reported that it was hand wrist. Then they said someone stepped on his foot. He was fine, and they didn't practice today. So a little bit concerning, but we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, Harbaugh was at the podium and reported that the X-rays had been negative on his foot. So that's good news. Now, I did also hear that he was holding his wrist after the play too, and it wouldn't be unusual that you would fall on your wrist in a way that would be uncomfortable if you get stepped on. So I'm hoping there's nothing there. Obviously, either injury would be very serious, but
for sure,
both bad. All right, we'll not think about the unthinkable and move on to the wide receiver position, where I think since in the first half of that first preseason game, any question about the 6th wide receiver is completely gone, and we have our 6. Who are you going with?
No, I agree. I think Wester showed that he has a lot of room for improvement as a receiver in the second game, but you cannot teach that sort of explosiveness and elusivity as a punt returner. So I believe he is the 6th. Walker should be the 5th. Tylan Wallace, primarily going to be a special teamer this upcoming season, I would imagine. And then the big 3, Flowers, Bateman, and Hopkins. So one of the best receiving corps in team history, if not the very best, walking into this season.
I like all of them and what they can provide to various degrees on offense, too. I think Wester can give you some gadgetry. I think that Walker can give you some deep threats, and hopefully, because that's how they used him in the last game, run some more comeback routes to better exploit his speed value there that gets some additional separation from that. Wallace, terrific run blocker, one of the best in the entire National Football League. He's also showed himself as the best ever yards per target player in Ravens history this last year. And very small sample size, admittedly, but it was a very fine year he had. Hopkins has had some problems with the knee. I'm probably most worried about him in terms of him remaining healthy for this year. But Flowers and Bateman don't need company in that 1 and 2 spot.
Yeah, Hopkins, I believe, is going to be a player that they manage snaps judiciously during the regular season. I think he was really brought in to be an extra security blanket for the postseason, and also has some of that veteran savvy. He's been around for a long time. He's played playoff games. So maybe I really think he is most earmarked for that final stretch run. At least that's how I hope they deploy him.
All right. Well, I would agree with that. And I think that when you're talking about Hopkins, I would not be expecting any kind of gaudy yardage total from him or any kind of gaudy target total. Odell actually was a little bit, he's certainly above my expectations in terms of targets and yards. I thought he had a better year than I was expecting. It was still below, the over-unders that Las Vegas has set, because people generally are too high on receivers like that. Anyway, Hopkins, an older player, and I think that most likely we're going to get underwhelmed by the total number of targets he gets, given the way the Ravens offense runs and the way they typically manage and win games.
Agreed. But that underwhelmed is a relative term. Maybe that's the best utilization, and you want to spread the ball around. This offense is equipped to spread the ball around.
They're still spending about $10 million, I think, on OBJ this year. The contract that keeps on giving to us, but they spent less on Wallace this time around.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the tight end position, where I think one of the big questions is whether or not Isaiah Likely starts the season on the 53. If he does, they could have him potentially active before week 4. If he doesn't, they gain a very important roster spot back, and they have a lot of excess players. We're going to talk about that in the second half of the show, who are at some risk of being, if they are cut, of being claimed.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, or tough to project, because we're not privy to the rehabilitation reports, medical reports. At this point, if I gun to my head, I had to choose what I think is going to happen. I do think that Likely is going to be on the initial 53, because even if there's a chance he can come back in week 3 or week 4, that would still potentially benefit the team. And the opening portion, the opening quarter of the season is probably the toughest. So if I had to guess, I would say they walk into week 1 with 4: Andrews, Likely, Kolar, and Pat Ricard.
I'll take the other side of that argument. I think I'll tell you why I think it's true. I think Likely starts on IR, and part of the indication of this, and it's something John just should have never said, was he said that Ali will be the 4th running back. We're going with 4 running backs now, as far as I can tell. He's not saying explicitly where he's getting that roster spot. He might be talking about, well, we're going to carry one less offensive lineman, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. I don't think there's really another choice other than he has to get it from Likely's spot.
I believe I heard a snippet that he said he's expecting 9 offensive linemen. John said that over the last week. So, but it's all gamesmanship to some extent. Yep. He could, he's saying that's what I think today, but so my mind could change tomorrow. Just a quick tangent. What type of division of responsibility is the final 53 between Harbaugh and DaCosta? Do you think?
It's a good question. I don't know for sure, but certainly they would both have input. And I'm not 100% sure on how they make that decision. Obviously, they really have to both agree on it. Does DaCosta have the right to overrule John on that? And that may be true. If you think back to the movie Moneyball, do you remember the disagreement that was happening between the manager and the GM in that case? And the manager said, "I'm responsible for the lineup card." But he then traded a player that he really liked. And that was just a funny part of the movie. I don't know is the simple answer.
I think they probably have veto authority on a few players each. At least that's the way I think it should be.
If in a 2-person system, if one person has a veto power, there has to be another choice. So it's kind of like you and your wife or girlfriend each have veto power on a restaurant you're going to go to. Well, there has to be another choice, or you're not going to go out to eat. Yeah. So yeah.
So these are the two. John says either this guy or this guy is the 53rd man, and DaCosta gets to pick, or maybe vice versa.
Okay, could be. Okay. Well, anyway, I think the comments on Ali are pretty telling that they're being loosey-goosey with the roster spots. I think the only loosey-goosey they can get is by sitting down a tight end. And by the way, I don't think it will really hurt the Ravens offense much to be without it'll be hurt them to be without Likely, but it won't hurt them to have 3 tight ends without Likely, as opposed to trying to put a Mitchell Payton or a Scotty Washington on the team. I think they're actually probably better off playing with 3.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're well equipped at tight end, and I think DeAndre Hopkins could fill some of the void left by Likely. They probably have somewhat of a similar route tree and stylistic. Although Likely's bigger, I think the route tree should be pretty similar.
I don't disagree with that. I also think this is an incredible opportunity to get Keaton Mitchell in there and get him off running in 2025. See what he's got. He's looked fantastic. He's been the Ravens MVP of camp and the preseason, in my opinion, the combination of the two. And I'm really excited to see a lot more of him. And I think with Likely out, I think there's more opportunity for that, given how you structure plays. Let's move on to the running back position, though. According to Harbaugh, it's 4 guys. I'll bow to that right now and say that Henry Hill, Mitchell, and Ali all make it with Likely out. Where are you on this? Same 4 guys, or do you have more?
I'll take the other side of the coin. I'll say Ali is not going to make it. I don't. It's not going to be the roster that we all think is perfect. It never is. There's always going to be a couple things where the fan base from the outside looking in could say they would have think there logically things should have been done a little differently, or someone else should have been chosen. But I think that's going to be maybe the other side of the ball. So I will say Ali does not make the 53. It's just he doesn't offer very much that can't be replicated by somebody else. Justice Hill can return kicks if necessary. So, and especially if he's not going to be activated on game day, what's really the point there? I mean, running back's not a position where you need a succession plan with the fresh legs coming into the league every single year.
Yeah, I agree. And they have a couple guys, Myles Gaskin and Dearness Johnson, who they could put either one on the practice squad and then elevate them. And frankly, they could do that with Ali. We're going to get into this in the second half of the show. What's the real risk of trying to slip Ali through to the practice squad at this point? Does he really represent a high probability of being taken?
I think that we can make a case that Gaskin and Johnson are better players than Ali. Even just because Ali was drafted by this team doesn't mean that he automatically gets the nod if the other players outperform him or have are more talented.
Okay, I mean, I there's nothing about the draft status alone that would say that. Ali played well in the first game. In the second game, he wasn't really that great. He's been given a lot of credit for what happened, but Dearness Johnson, I thought, was a man possessed in terms of his individual running.
I mean, they've both shown more, just real quick, they've both shown more in the regular season than Ali has over the years. Yeah. Now, of course, their skills may be declining as they age, but they definitely have better regular season track record, both of them.
All right, so we're both at 15 players through the running backs, quarterback to running back. We did it differently. You had Likely on, I had Ali on for the extra spot. So I assume you're carrying 10 offensive linemen if you're not doing a 26-24 split of players.
I think I'm going to do a 24-26 split just for entertainment purposes. I mean, this is a projection, but I think that's a possibility. At least I hope it's a possibility.
All right. So your offensive line, and then you're only going to have 9 on the offensive line. So I'll read through mine and you tell me who you're leaving out. How about that? So I have the starters, Stanley, Rosengarten, Linderbaum, Faalele, and Voorhees, all there. And then I have Noteboom, Vinson, the draft pick, obviously, Cleveland, Bullock, who has very clearly won the backup center job, and Garrett Dellinger being the 10th guy, the 7th round draft pick.
So I think the decision is going to come down to Cleveland versus Dellinger. Dellinger, I know you've graded him pretty well. He did not personally impress me the last game. He was a 7th round pick. Offensive guards are probably one of the lesser coveted positions on the offensive side of the ball. And it's a coin flip, really. I thought Cleveland struggled last game too, and he's only on a 1-year deal. So let me throw a curveball and say that Ben Cleveland is going to be the player that is left off the 53. Okay, I think is he going to be suspended or not? Did we ever find clarity on that?
I'm not aware of any kind of suspension. I don't know what that would mean, honestly, for roster purposes. He does have 0 guaranteed money, and he makes the vet minimum. So he could even be a handshake guy, theoretically, that the Ravens could bring back. I'm just afraid he is a real size and shape guard that very well could be taken by another team if the Ravens cut him. And he's not subject to the waiver wire. He'd just be signed away.
Right. So, well, I mean, they had the opportunity this offseason, right? And then then he got arrested, and then he came back to the Ravens, I think, a couple of days later. So maybe there wasn't very much interest in him. I'm not positive. Just quick question, do you think Noteboom or Vinson could fill in at guard, or do you think Bullock, under that scenario with no true guards on the backup, would you say Bullock would be the backup?
They'd have Bullock and Dellinger as backups. So yeah. I'm fine with that. I think they have very strong interior 6 to make 3 with Linderbaum, Voorhees, Faalele, and then 3 what I consider to be at least a chance to be serviceable backups. Okay. Let me put it this way: the guard depth for the money expended, and the interior offensive line depth for the money expended is remarkably high, remarkable value at those positions, and you got to have some of that. So you got to have
Yes, you
some
do.
positions where you pay less.
And that's where Lamar elevates the most too. So it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. I am concerned about Noteboom. I didn't like his play in the last game. I think the Ravens are actually paper thin at tackle right now.
Mhm.
They've got the top two. They've got Noteboom, who I don't really trust on either side, and they've got Vincent, who I don't believe is ready. Even though I was very encouraged by his last game. I don't know if you saw my or heard my scoring on the game, but he ended up having a C for the game, but there's a whole lot of positive that went in there. He had 4 pancake blocks. He made 8 blocks,
Mhm.
I think it was, in level 2. I mean, just a whole bunch of very nice things he did. He's very violent, very aggressive with his arms, particularly when he gets out into space. He wants to finish.
Mhm.
There's a lot to like. And
Sure.
I would say, looking at that game, a C game, it just sounds ridiculous, but he's miles ahead of where he should be at this point as a
Mhm.
developmental offensive lineman. I wouldn't put it past him that he could be playing in 26.
Yeah.
I would not
I,
put it
I,
past
I hope so. I hope so. That'd be a great development for the team. We've seen this team make the second round of the playoffs with who was it? Tyree Phillips and Alejandro Villanueva
him.
manning the offensive tackle spots. So, in the case of emergency, knock on wood, but Lamar's a magician back there. As long as he's healthy, if you did have to go into your backups, I think you'd still have a pretty good shot to make a run.
Yeah. Let's hope that's a backup at guard or center and not a backup at either
Mhm.
tackle spot, but I agree.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the defense now. The interior defensive line. I'm projecting 5 guys to be on there. How are you feeling about that?
I believe it's also going to be 5.
So we both, I assume, got the same guys. Jones, Matabike, and Washington have sat out the preseason so far, so they've really bubble wrapped Broderick Washington, which is surprising. But he has had a great camp. He has been a guy who's been violent. He's been in the backfield. He's been making plays. And then we've seen some of John Jenkins, but very little, like about 8 snaps from each game of Jenkins. He's had a couple of pressures. Peebles has looked terrific in both games. In fact, both games I felt like Peebles is the guy who, on second watch of the game, meaning I watch it live and then I watch it to do the no scoring and the notes. The second watch, both times he was the most relatively impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think it's another pick that has potential to pay off big time dividends. On the topic of backup nose tackle, we discussed that last week. We were talking about Okoye and Jones and versus Jenkins. The more I think about it, I think they want the stability of the veteran there so I do agree with you on Jenkins. And I think Brent Urban's going to be probably on the practice squad and elevated when necessary. They just don't play a lot of base. So, a 5 tech just doesn't have that much value. And unless he's getting after the quarterback as a 3 tech, it seems that they have other players that are more capable. So there's not a whole lot of benefit there, unfortunately.
Yeah, he would be a guy who comes in and replaces Washington or Peebles with the regular roster spot if one of those guys goes down, or even potentially even Matabike, but then Peebles has to move up a step too to become a more impactful 3 tech. But he's not any kind of solution to the nose tackle situation. So you have Jones and Jenkins. Jones you love, and then Jenkins you're concerned about. And then Okoye and Jones are 2 other potential solutions. And we did talk about that last week, so we don't want to, drill it through. But I will say both of those guys are size and shape players who might get taken. And we'll get into that in the second part.
Agreed. Yep. Edge.
Start us off.
Yeah. So the question was, were they going to keep 5? Were they going to keep 6? Adisa Isaac apparently has ligament damage in his elbow as well, so he's likely to start on the designated to return IR list, and maybe going to be the only one if Likely's not on there, because I believe Ardarius can be on the PUP list and Emory Jones can be on the NFI list, and they can be activated during the season. So maybe somebody hurts their toenail in week 3 and they take another spot, but at this point, it looks like it's going to be 5. I do think they are going to keep Ojabo, but just because I do think he potentially offers some value, some upside, maybe as a tradable asset after he shows a little something in the beginning of the season towards the deadline. Maybe he's thrown into a deal for a player-per-player deal or to sweeten the pot potentially. So anyway, Owe, Van Noy, Green, Robinson, and Ojabo, with Robinson and I suppose Green also taking on a role on special teams.
So here's my issue with the Ajabo as the fifth outside linebacker. And we've been going through this dance of death with David Ajabo now for a while. But Isaac clearly was an easy choice in terms of special teams abilities, more time on still left under contract. And now he's off the table. So Ajabo, the guy you're left with to replace Isaac now doesn't really have the same special teams footprint that Isaac had. He plays a lot less. He's not as fast. He won't be a guy who can help you as much on, say, punt coverage or kickoff coverage in the same way that Isaac can. Now they have been playing Ajabo more on special teams at camp, but I wonder now, how easy is it for David Ajabo to get a game day activation? Given if the other guys are healthy, I see him as a pretty easy inactive on game day.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's more injury contingency insurance. Somebody else is banged up. They are inactive that game. He gets a chance to showcase his skills as a DPR, designated pass rusher. That's really how it is. Sometimes you just want to keep talented players away from your competition too, even if you don't have a use for them. Stacking them on your bench prevents them from going and helping your competitor, maybe.
Okay, well, if they feel that way about it, trade him to the NFC for a conditional 7th or a conditional 6th that ends up being a 7th, whatever it might be.
Yep.
So they've got options. I think they've been talking up with Ali and Ajabo. They've been doing some very similar things in terms of talking these players up into more than what they really mean to the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of frustrated me to some degree. Well, let's move on. So I have Ajabo making it also, by the way. But I also think that the Ravens may look at Jadeveon Clowney again and say, do we go out there and invest a couple million in him?
Yeah, I would be certainly in favor of that. He had a great year for the Ravens 2 years ago. There was a report today, I believe, that he is now contacting teams in Jadeveon Clowney form, waiting till the end of August. Excuse me. Two other players of note, former Ravens, Matthew Judon just latched on with, I believe, the Dolphins yesterday, and Zadarius Smith still remains unsigned. They may have poisoned the well with that contract negotiation a couple years ago. Clowney would be my pick, but considering the injury to Isaac, I could see an addition at the outside linebacker edge position.
Okay. And Malik Ham would be another choice if you want a better special teams player. You could go to him. And Ham, one thing I like about him is that it gives you some Sam capability. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's something you get with Ajabo either. So it's interesting. I mean, it was a very crowded position. The position is less crowded now, but in some way it's still just as unsure to me as it was before.
Yeah, I wouldn't be completely shocked if they opted to keep Ham instead of Ajabo. Mm-hmm. I think it's a slim chance, but I wouldn't be floored if that happened.
And would you be bothered by it at all?
No, I think I liked Ham last year. I had him on my initial projection last year before he got hurt. I think he's played well anytime he's been healthy enough to play. So, and I think he brings a lot to the table as a potential, rotational piece.
He's a third-year player, which is the one downside to Malik Ham. So you're worried about that. If you want a younger guy, Kamen Rucker had a big footprint during the preseason. He could be a guy too who they'd sneak onto the back end of the roster, and he might also be a guy that gets taken if they cut him. Let's move over to inside linebacker for a minute because we've got just a couple of absolute human highlight reels that have been coming in the second half for the Ravens in the preseason. But Smith, Simpson, Buchanan seem to be all very solid. Are you on the Jake Hummel train that he's on the team, or does he still have some competition now?
I think he does have competition. We kicked around the idea of releasing Hummel and elevating one of the UDFAs last week. I watched Hard Knocks, and Sean McDermott of Buffalo was giving a speech to his team. He said all teams reserve 3 spots for special teamers, but that's Buffalo. So I think in Baltimore, John Harbaugh probably reserves 5 or maybe 6 spots for solely special teamers. So I do think Hummel's going to make the cut there. But my difference as the extra man on defense is going to be with Jay Higgins becoming the 5th inside linebacker to make the squad. So you're adding to your special teams, but he's also can help on defense. Zach Orr had some glowing remarks about Higgins I believe, one day this week, and I don't think you necessarily do that for a UDFA that you're trying to sneak through waivers.
That's a good point, and that sometimes does say something. They know not to talk about certain players. So you're cutting Cleveland and keeping Higgins. That's your exchange there.
Yep.
All right. So I think Hummel is the better chance to be cut. I think that you have a better. First of all, he's got 100,000 in guaranteed money, so it's cheaper to keep Higgins even after the money is considered. But second of all, I think you could keep them both, and you could keep them both by dropping a safety or a corner. And I think you've got some guys at those two positions who are very low probability of being taken. And we'll get again into the chances of Higgins and Martin being taken. But I'd like to retain both of those guys. I'd like them both on the practice squad. They're bigs for special teams value. So you only have a certain number of tight ends and linebackers on the team who can play on the inside on the punt unit both ways.
Right.
Yeah, they're of value. Yeah.
If I was making the 53, I would have Higgins and Martin both make it and release Hummel. But if just by watching this team over the years, I think they are going to keep Hummel. I think that's a Harbaugh hero.
Okay. All right. Very good. Let's move over to cornerback, where I have real concerns about the 2026 cornerback rotation being too old, but the 2025 cornerback rotation, if healthy, they should be pretty good. So,
I mean, I think the biggest concern at this point is Alexander nor Owuzie have practiced in a week plus, I think, right at this point, right? So, is Jalen Armour-Davis going to be thrust into a fourth cornerback role early in the season? Potentially. But I think that the six have been pretty clear for the most part. Not Martin. What's the slot man's name? I forgot. Slipping my mind.
Martin.
Yeah. Okay. Martin. Sorry. I think he made a little bit of a run for it. But as we touched on, slot corner, nickel corners are abundant. So there's not a whole lot of value in rostering him. I'm not sure if anyone else would pick him up. And, we'll get to that, I guess, when we come to our second segment.
Right. So the thing I'd say about the cornerback group, I love the top two. The next two are kind of a mystery meat in terms of what we're going to get here on these. But then you've got Armour-Davis, and he took a big step forward in the first preseason game with a very fine game, found the football. All of a sudden, he's not Jalen Armour-Davis anymore in terms of being a guy who can do some things that he couldn't. I'm worried about TJ Tampa. I'm worried about his speed not being sufficient to play the corner position, but he had 2 interceptions in camp yesterday. So that was a big deal. And then I think it's possible that they would go with 7th corner. If they did, it would be Keon Martin. Marquise Robinson has also had a fine camp in preseason, and I would love for him to be on the practice squad.
Yeah, for sure. If you could find players that perform well with the size and the shape, I think it's, Kerry Williams, I think, comes to mind as a player that kind of took that route. There's been some others too. So, yeah, that'd be great.
All right, let's move over to safety. There's a real question of whether the Ravens will keep 10 or 11 between safety and corner. You have them keeping 11? I did it?
Yes.
Okay, so you have 5 safeties since we only named 6 corners. You're not keeping Keon Martin, right?
I don't know. Maybe I should reconsider considering the injuries. Let's keep it as it is, 6 and 5.
Sure. Okay, so then the safeties, Hamilton, Starks, and Kane, I would say, are very clear cut. And then you have Lowry and Braid. I think Lowry has made the team. And then Braid becomes a kind of a 53rd or 54th man situation where he could be a guy who makes it a safety. He's certainly a highly valued special teams player, but he's not a guy who's really shown much on the back end.
Correct. So again, if I was in Eric DeCosta's shoes, John Harbaugh's shoes, I would keep a 7th corner and release Braid. However, I think the special teams ability is going to compel the team to keep Bo Braid as the 5th safety. Now, how does that impact game day inactives remains to be seen. maybe there's a chance that they just want to, they had a poor special teams year last year, and I don't think that probably sticks in Harbaugh's crawl, and they want to make sure they come out of the gate strong. And maybe that means Lowry is inactive for the first couple games and then gets a jersey and other pieces of the puzzle move around, and Braid's, relegated to the practice squad eventually. But I think week 1, if I had to guess, I would say Braid makes it.
Braid is on the 53 to start the season. Lowry also on the 53. You're just saying he'd be inactive in week 1. Yeah,
I think so. So I have 5 inside linebackers, 6 corners, and 5 safeties.
Right. All right. Well, wonderful. I think that is what I have right now as well. And I think that's going to be a source.
You ever have one of those days where everything's off? Well, Mood can help with that. And let me tell you about Mood. It's the online cannabis brand that is changing the way we handle everything, from stress to sleepless nights, with functional gummies that are 100% federally legal cannabis. Mood launched to make cannabis affordable, accessible, and transparent, while at the same time supporting American farmers growing premium hemp on small pesticide-free farms. Their gummies are next level. Seriously, I've tried a few, and each one feels totally different. The Sleepy Time gummies, out like a light, immediately asleep. The Epic Euphoria, it's perfect when you just need a reset to feel good again. What makes them unique? Mood combines THC with herbs and adaptogens, so you get real targeted effects. You're not going to find this in your typical dispensary. And here's the best part. Mood ships discreetly to most states, offers a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, and right now you get 20% off your first order with the promo code RAVEN. Just head to mood.com. Find your perfect gummy and use the code RAVENS at checkout to save 20%.
Of some inactives during the regular season. As you mentioned, Lowry, I think it could be Tampa and Braid who are inactive. I also think if you're looking for a player you can cut, who you have a pretty good chance to slip him through, Bo Braid is probably right there in terms of guys that aren't a big risk.
I think so.
So let's move over and talk about the risk of being claimed if cut. First of all, let me preface this by saying I think fans of a team, fans who micro look at preseason football, tend to overrate their chances of their own players being claimed significantly. So part of me is saying, just cut all these numbers in half that I have here for each of these players.
Well, we've seen it. I mean, the last few years, I don't know if this guy's going to make it through. I don't know. And then they last the whole year on the practice squad. I think the other teams, just like the Ravens, have all their darlings. All the other 31 teams all have their darlings, and they've invested the last 2-3 months training these players, and they don't want to replace them with an unknown sometimes.
Right. I think you're hitting it exactly right. And sometimes they want to send a message from a coach saying, this is the work ethic, or this is how we want you to act in the meeting room, that we can't really even see on the field. And they value that thing higher. And so it's certainly true. Okay, we got a long list of names here, about 25 guys roughly we want to talk about in terms of their chance of being cut. So let's just go down and you and I can each give kind of a percentage on this. You can go first. You can see my percentages here, obviously. But Rasheen Ali's chance of being claimed if cut.
10%, I would say. I've watched a good bit of preseason last weekend, and I saw a lot of teams with running back size players and even some receiver size players bringing out kicks and looking good at it. So I don't think that's really appealing to most teams across the league, that they need a backup kickoff return man.
Yeah, I'm not convinced also that the Ravens decide that they or have decided that it's the only way they can go with it. But, Harbaugh's talking about it. I'd say 20% Ali gets claimed. That might be too high. I'd readily admit that. It could be 15. It could even be 10. But I think there is a chance. And I think it mostly comes down to demand across the league for running backs to return kicks. You're saying you didn't see too much of it. And I'm saying if the average number of running backs per team goes from 3.2 to 3.6, then Ali is just the kind of player who's on the margin who there'll be pressure on him to be taken.
Do you think is it beneficial to have a split end zone with two? I mean, because the way they're kicking it now, it seems like the ball's in the air forever. They had plenty of time to get underneath of it.
You don't have an option on that. You have to have the formation is set in terms of where the players have to stand. Okay. So it could be that you could have one guy back and rush him up.
That's what I mean.
In which case, you could do something like that. Then you were going to want a bigger player in that other position, and probably you're running a what?
Pat Ricard.
Okay, so there's 8 up players who are along the quote unquote line of, not the line of scrimmage, but the start line. And then there's, I'm sorry, but they're within
9.
that first 5 yards, I should say. And then there's one guy who's the mid-range player, and then there's another 2 that are back. And I don't think you're allowed to deviate from that. So I don't see Ricard being a guy on the back end, because it's too broad a field. It's like playing single high over the whole field. It would be very difficult. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Moving on.
All right. So Lucas Scott would be next, a guy who played pretty impressively, I'd say, this last game.
I'll go with 10 again, I guess. 10's yeah.
Okay. Now this is a position where there's relatively few teams that would pull the trigger on this move. And yet we saw it wasn't a claim in the case of Ben Mason, but it was a signing away in the case of Ben Mason. I think I'm basically including that in what we're seeing here. So I don't think that Lucas Scott will be claimed, but I think there's a reasonable chance that another team with a fullback says, you don't want to play behind Patrick Ricard, do you? Come on over to San Diego or New England. I
think the cyclical nature of the sport is now encouraging more tight ends. Seems like more teams are having tight ends than maybe 3-4 years ago. So it's coming back around. So that's why I'll stick with 10. Okay.
All right. Fair enough. Dayton Wade is the number 3 player.
I'll agree with your 5%. He's not a rookie. He's replacement level, below replacement level. Most teams have plenty of guys like that.
And I think he is, by the way, still a year 1 player. So he's starting his 4 years this year. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So, but he hasn't shown out in the preseason the way he did last year.
Right.
They had a pretty good second game, but didn't have a good first game at all. 2 of the 3 balls thrown to him got intercepted. So kind of like he had Wester's second game in the first week, and that was I'm sure that would turn off a lot of teams. Next one is Zaire Mitchell-Payton, the tight end, a big physical guy, looks the part of the tight end, almost has never caught the ball for the Ravens. He's got 1 catch.
Yeah, I think it's below 5%. It seems he's a player that probably a lot of teams would like to have on their practice squad, but I don't see a lot of teams having space for him on their 53.
Okay. All right. Because he could be signed away, but he probably would not be claimed away. Okay. Now Scotty Washington, another tight end, probably a notch down, but a little bit more of a dedicated receiver who's also got a big body.
I'd say less than 5% again. It's he doesn't seem like necessarily a NFL level player. He's more of a practice squad level player.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think rosters have to attrit down to make him exciting to other teams. Let's move to the offensive lineman. Corey Bullock has had a terrific run at camp, and then the preseason to be inserted as what very clearly is the backup center role right now. I have him at 35% to get taken. I think he's played well enough that offensive line depth is very significant to NFL teams, and they would want a player like this.
I had him at 40%. So yeah, we're pretty close there. Definitely showed well.
And you're happy with him being the backup center as it goes right now. And
sure.
What I really want to know is your chance that he could be the starting center in 26, assuming Linderbaum leaves. So we're only considering the universe in which Linderbaum actually leaves. Does Bullock end up taking that starting role? Do the Ravens end up going to the draft to find that guy for free agency? How do they find it?
It's tough to make a judgment off of 2 preseasons, basically. You'd like to see him go against some starters to really get a good gauge of how could fare. But I'd probably be comfortable with that. I think, I don't see him any worse than Matt Skura or some of the other centers.
Tristan Colon. Yeah.
Tristan Colon. So, yeah, I think, based on what I've seen, I probably would be comfortable with that. And I'm actually kind of secretly hoping they don't re-sign Linderbaum and save that money for another position.
Okay. All right. It may work out that way if they just play a very fiscally sound judgment. They may well come to the conclusion that we need Travis Jones more and we need Isaiah Likely more. It's certainly possible.
Yep.
Let's go to Nick Samac. Made the team last year, and I'm forgetting if he made the initial 53. I think he did, but then I don't remember if he was there the entire season or not.
When did Linderbaum hurt his neck? Was that week 2?
Oh no, he hurt his neck before the season started.
Yeah. Okay. So I think they carried him into the season because Linderbaum was banged up, and then once Linderbaum was healthy enough to play, they demoted him, if I recall.
Okay. And then who was the backup center under that situation? McCary would have been, but he was playing guard. He just had to make multiple switches.
Well, at first he was playing right tackle, right? And then he started playing guard.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's the problem of using your quote unquote trump card early is you don't have it to make another move with you. It forces you into a double move.
Yep.
All right. I have Samak at 5% to be taken if he's cut.
I'd say less than 5. I just don't think he's done enough on tape to get anybody too excited.
Okay. 7th round draft pick a year ago. I would agree. Garrett Dellinger is next, and he's a rookie. So he's got that going for him. Still a 7th round pick. So a lot of teams passed on him plenty of times. I have him at 15%. Again, I'm thinking IOL depth is important. All offensive line depth is. And in Dellinger's case, I would definitely say there's more of a chance as time goes forward and there's some attrition on the offensive line.
Yeah, I'd go to 20% on Dellinger. We've seen in the past Ravens trade away late round draft pick guards and get relatively decent compensation. I think there is a thirst for interior offensive linemen, and there's been attrition during the preseason already. So I could see somebody taking a stab at him. Yeah,
Ben Bredesen and Nick Easton come to mind as guys they traded away during camp. And Easton wasn't even drafted, and they traded him for a 7th round pick. I mean, it's just And then he played in the league a number of years. A number of years. So
for the Saints, I think, right? Yeah.
They originally traded the 49ers. I'm not sure where he got most of his playing time during his career, but it might have been 1 year with the 49ers and a bunch of years with the Saints. I've kind of forgotten.
Been a while. All
right. The next guy is kind of interesting because he's an offensive tackle and he's a size and shape guy, but Jared Christian Lichtenhan, I have at 15%. There isn't anything about Christian Lichtenhan as an offensive tackle that's really exciting at this point, other than he could develop into something better.
Yeah, I'll co-sign on your 15% there. I think without examining every single depth chart, I think there's some teams that probably would. Some teams that are clearly in rebuilding mode that can afford to just stash multiple developmental guys on their 53.
Yeah, I would even say looking at how weak the Ravens are at offensive tackle, it's not impossible that GCL would be a guy who could help the Ravens this year. It's not impossible. So if he went to the practice squad and either Noteboom or Stanley or somebody else got hurt, I think it's possible he's the first up and not Vincent, as a lot of people might expect. But Vincent, definitely a developmental player and a massive size and shape prospect who's now played 124 preseason snaps between the 2 games.
Wow.
And has looked pretty darn good. I by the way, I expect him to play the entire game this week. I don't think there's a reason for Noteboom may play a series or 2, but I don't really think there's any reason for anybody else to play. And he and Christian Lichtenhan should get a really good look this weekend.
Oh yeah, Vincent benefits from the reps probably more than any other player on this 90 man. Yeah. So you have him at 90%. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a very high chance that he would be claimed. Not only does he have the size and shape, but now he has some good tape on top of it. So the NFL is desperate for backup tackles. So there'd be a very high chance for that.
Yeah. All right, Jake Hummel. Now he's a special case because he's in year 4, and I don't know if he has to go through the waiver claim process. And the reason I don't know that is that Sam Mustipher was in year 4, and I don't believe he did have to go through the waiver claim process. The Ravens cut him, and then they re-signed him to the practice squad. And for whatever reason, it didn't look like he went through the waiver claims process. He was cut the other thing, whatever they designated as. It's not cut waived. It's the cut the other thing.
I don't recall.
There's 2 designations for it, and one applies to rookies, and the other, or at least this used to be the way it was, and then one applies to veterans who you can re-sign. They're true free agents as soon as they get cut, and I think that Hummel might be that guy, or he may have to go through waivers. If he does, I put a
15.
Yeah, maybe 50.
50.
Yeah.
Huh.
So the thing is, he's a pretty easy claim with not a lot of expense to him. Whoever claims him would only have to pay the remaining vet min money on his thing, and he's a fairly well-known special teams player. So I think there may be a team out there that would want him. That's the reason. And he's one of the Ravens type special teams guys. I don't think any team, but I certainly don't think the Ravens really look at special teams players as you can just play special teams. I think they have to do special teams and something else.
Agreed.
And so Hummel is a guy I think who played 50 defensive snaps or thereabouts last year, and he can give you a little bit of defense maybe if you need to finish out a game or maybe even maybe even be there for a week.
Okay, so I was going to go lower, but I guess I'll take your percentage into consideration and say 30% for Hummel.
Okay.
If there are some teams that are just waiting with their fingers crossed, saying we can't wait to get another. What we really need at this walking into week 1 is a special teams ace. So
right.
Yeah.
So there is maybe Okay, we'll leave it at that. I think I'm probably adding up the two possibilities of the chance he gets claimed and the chance he goes somewhere else if doesn't have to go through that process, which is not really the same thing, but
I think Welsh did that, right? Well, Welsh didn't make the 53, went somewhere else, then he came back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then they had a spot for him.
Yeah.
So, these special teams decisions are tricky to peg because not all teams value special teams equally.
All right, let's keep going. Jay Higgins. I actually think the chance of him being claimed is not that high. I've got him at 15%, which I know seems low, but the same things that kept teams away from Jay Higgins in the draft are still present. He ran a 4.82 I think his play speed is much higher than that. Maybe the tape convinces teams, but I don't think it's just going to completely reverse their decision.
I would go to 40% on Higgins. I do think his tape has been strong. And I do think maybe the team that was considering Hummel might say, well, hey, let's take Higgins. He can help us a little bit on special teams, but also help us more on defense. Because there is a shortage of quality inside linebackers that kind of have a versatile, that are not true, but potential 3-down backers. It is a little bit of a tough skill set, and the instincts, allow him to play faster than his timed, measurables. You've seen it now for 2 games. So I think it would be pretty 40%, not more than half, but a reasonable shot.
All right. The one thing I'll say about his ability to play 3-down football and whatnot, I think he'd be a 2-down linebacker, by the way, if he was. But he has played against some really back end of the roster kind of quarterbacks in terms of the kind of guys who could take advantage of the fact that there's an inside linebacker there. And that's part of the context of preseason that I just have a hard time getting away from, is that those guys just are they're getting to play against some lesser lights.
That's very true. If we're going to hold it against Ali, we have to hold it against Higgins too.
Yeah, there you go. Chandler Martin, I have it 10% to get done. And a guy, he's faster than Higgins, could be a better special teams player.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Could be better special teams. I'll go to 25% on Martin.
Okay.
Same kind of theory that there is a little bit of a shortage inside backers.
Okay, fair enough. Those are 2 guys that then the Ravens are at risk of losing. Malik Ham, I have at 5%. I think his injury history being what it is, if the Ravens indicate that they don't need him on the roster, when David Ojabo is the alternative, I think they're already kind of setting the mark for other teams.
Yeah, some of that sunk cost thinking, I think, might apply to some teams saying, well, they kept Ojabo because they invested a second in him and they don't want to let him go for free. There is some of that around the league, even though theoretically it doesn't make sense. Anyway, long story short, Ham, I'm going to say 15%.
Whoa, that's really high.
I think, and I'm going to base that off of Jeremiah Moon latching on with Pittsburgh, who was a sort of a similar player with a similar kind of trajectory that did find a home elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. David Ojabo. Now, we're getting to one of the most interesting on the entire sheet because he has the IPPP exemption, which only matters when on the practice squad during the regular season. He counted against the 90 all summer, so the Ravens didn't have an extra man in camp. They have at least a couple other guys, Okoye among them, and I'm trying to think of who else they've got. I'm not sure if Mitchell Payton is an IPPP guy or not. Something tells me he was, but maybe that's not true. And then so anyway, it's at least those 2 they have. So David Ajabo, in terms of his chance to get claimed if he gets waived.
I'm going to go with 70%.
That's very
I
high.
think the reason being, these GMs do not like to give up on early round picks. If you take a glance at our lads, you'll find every first round, second round, third round bust in the 2 deep or 3 deep across the league. It's what happened? Oh, I forgot about that guy. Oh yeah, that guy. And they don't want to give up on talent, right? Never give up on talent. So I'm not saying that they would be wise to kick off somebody better, but as far as projecting, I think there's probably some GMs out there that saw him do a couple things in the first game and think maybe they can be a reclamation expenditure.
Okay. All right. I'm lower than that. I'm probably going to adjust my number up slightly from the sheet and say between 20 and 25% chance that he might be claimed. But one of the things, the Ravens are kind of branding him with a scarlet letter if they cut him. It's a pretty big deal if they keep Ham over him, or they decide they want to go with 4 outside linebackers, or they go out and sign Clowney even that one at least is a little more, hey, we're planning to win now, and David Ajabo just didn't fit our needs for that, and we have to say goodbye. It doesn't work out. But if they keep Ham over him, I mean, that's just we don't think he's that good a player.
Yeah, and now that I think of it, the fact that Clowney is still available might want to make me want to rethink and lower my number a little bit.
Okay, well, that's okay. It's part of this this Delphi process is what we're describing here, is one where we all both adjust our numbers towards the other. All right, let's move on. We've got TJ Tampa. I've got about 20%. That may be too high. He had 2 interceptions yesterday. I think he's made the team more than likely, but this is if they cut him, does somebody claim him?
Right. I go to 25, and that's just because he is still young. Now, I think it was a little bit telling that he slid in the draft. He slid a full round below where he was projected to go. So maybe there isn't that much love for him. If he'd been picked where he was pegged in the draft and had the same exact career so far, I'd probably put it higher. But I think maybe some of the other teams saw the deficiencies that have caused him to not have the best preseason this year.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, they certainly didn't. They looked at his speed and were scared. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
Keon Martin had a big preseason, but he's 5'9", 170 or 175 pounds. Let me get that right. Keon Martin is 38, 5'9", 170, and 24 years old too, by the way.
A little bit older. Okay. I'll go to 10. I think there is a lot of slot nickels around. There was a player last year, name escaped me last week and is escaping me again, but I think you and I both thought they might lose this guy, and he stuck around on the practice squad all year and didn't even come to camp this year. And I know you were fond of him, and I was as well. So, yeah, I'll go to 10 on Martin.
Oh, who was that? Now you're going to drive me nuts for like.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up while you Ravens UDFAs 2024.
There you go. So the next one is Ruben Lowry. And again, I don't think this. I had Keon Martin at 5%. By the way, you had him at 10.
10.
So Ruben Lowry. First of all, I don't think he's going to get cut. But if he does get cut, I think the chance of him actually being taken is fairly slim. I have it 15%. I think he's shown the ability to do to be a split field safety. But I also think the Ravens like him more because he's their type, being a really brainy guy in the room. And other teams, they just don't have a way to lock in on that right now.
I'd go higher on Lowry. I'd go to 25 with Geno Stone being taken away as the example there. The player I was thinking of is Bump Cooper Jr.
Bump Cooper, there you go.
5'11", 186 out of Oregon State. He played pretty well. Got demoted to the practice squad, stuck around all year, and who knows what he's doing now because he's not in camp this year. So, yeah, I mean, this is all kind of speculation, but if you could kind of find something from the past that, maybe makes you think a certain thing.
All right. So Lowry, you're at 25. Let's move on to Bo Braid. And I think this is a really interesting one because I actually think if he's cut, the chance of losing him is very low. I have him at 10%. I just don't think there's anything other than being a good special teams player, which does have some value. I don't think there's anything he brings as a safety that doesn't have a very large pool of available talent there.
Agreed. I'll stick with 10% as well. Just a quick side note there. I've noticed last year or two, there's been several of these strong safety types that get converted to inside linebacker and are now playing inside linebacker. I don't think Braid has the size to do that, but there have been, what was the guy that got traded to the Seahawks from the Jets? Jamal Adams is now playing inside linebacker for the Raiders under Pete Carroll again. And there's the Jets, one of their starting inside linebackers played safety in college. So there's a lot of these guys, I guess, is the point I'm trying to get to.
Trenton Simpson is a converted safety as well. So yeah, there are a lot of them, and I think a lot of them could be used as sub-package linebackers. I think Bo Braid would make a fine dime. I hope that that could be something he would do in Baltimore if he hangs here. Let's move on. Jason Jones. We're talking about the nose tackle group right now. We're talking about the defensive line group right now. So Jason Jones, I have him at 25%. He's one of my highest ones on the entire board. And the reason he's so high, he's lower than Bullock, lower than Hummel. And that's it.
Ojabo. And Vincent.
Vincent. Yes, Vincent.
Yeah.
But Jason Jones is a pure size and shape guy. And I think there's a real risk of losing him. By the way, he's in tremendous shape relative to what he played at Auburn. If you saw him at Auburn, he's a big fat guy. Now he's, a big muscular dude.
Yeah. I think you might be a little high on this one. In my perspective, I will go to 20 on Jason Jones. And there is a thirst for that, but it's not what it used to be where every team was running a 0-1 all the time. Most of the fronts now are gap and a half, and they're trying to penetrate, and that's not necessarily his game.
Okay, well, fair enough. So if they're going to be a head up 2 or a 2-eye, then there's a different skill set that certainly goes with that. I've liked what he did in terms of the preseason so far. Okay, let's move on to what I think is one of the big ones, which is CJ Okoye. Maybe the ultimate size and shape guy on the entire team after Vincent, being a guy that just meets exactly what people think a nose tackle ought to look like, and a developmental prize to be had. I still think the chance of him going is relatively low. Even he's been 2 years. He could have been taken by any other team off the Las Vegas the Chargers practice squad and signed away, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, no, and then he took a step back in the last game for sure. So you came up with 30 here. I think that's a good number. We just saw some trades yesterday or Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't recall, for some defensive tackles. And Harrison Phillips from the Vikings, who's a pretty good player, went for a 6th. So, I think I just don't want to overestimate the value teams have for nose tackles, but I think he has a lot of potential. I think maybe what happens in this third game could swing this number 10%, 15% in one direction or another.
Right. All right. And then the last one is a guy who's played very well in the preseason, CJ Ravenel.
Your number here is 10. I think that's a good number. There are times where you find Kelly Gregg was a player like that, where they hung around with another team for a year or two, and then they caught his eye, and then he went somewhere else and really thrived. So even though he didn't make the team last year, he put some good tape out, and he could be gone. I think 10% is a good number.
Right. Okay. Well, great. And that takes us to the end of our list. Anybody else you can think of that we should be including on this?
No, I think we got everybody. I'll take a quick look again. Anthony Miller? Probably not, right?
0. Yeah.
0.
Hey, he's not even subject to the waiver claim process.
So that's right. Yeah, he's vested. Yeah.
Same thing for Kirkwood.
Hoyland? Oh no, Hoyland's gone. So he's already gone. Yeah. No, I think that's covered everybody. The Ravens would do a great job. They're probably more susceptible to being poached in other teams because they have a better 54 through 65 than other teams. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well,
I wouldn't rule out one more IR DTR to maximize that 55. The rules there. You might as well take advantage of it. Maybe that's a defensive back might be the way to go there.
Yeah, they could stash somebody away. I mean, the problem is with some of these rookies, they really need the developmental time. But there may be a guy, and I'm not sure who it is, I'm really not sure who it is that they could stash for a period of time. But the Ravens love their midseason replacements and to get them set up.
Maybe it could be Jair Alexander if he's having trouble with that knee. And that could be, and then you put Martin on the team, and then you go from there.
Okay. I'd be very frustrated if that were the case, but
sure.
But yeah, it is possible. All right, Vas, always a pleasure doing this show with you. And next time we talk, we'll be running right into the regular season. So I am more excited than I can say. I guess we have actually 2 shows to do before the regular season starts, right?
Yeah, they have a week off. First game is September 7th.
So our next week we'll probably be discussing the practice squad and who's been signed to it. So we'll have a show on that, and then we'll have a first week before the season, all the problems that then exist in terms of talking about them.
Maybe we'll have an early extension to discuss it.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah,
wouldn't that be cool? All right, well, Vas, tell folks where they can talk to you online, and always, of course, give us a brief mention of your restaurant and where that is.
I am on Twitter X at Vasilis Fiamata, Vasilis Fiamata. Fiamata is the name of our new restaurant, 2900 Baltimore Boulevard in Finksburg, Maryland, Italian Cuisine and Lounge. Please stop in and say hello if you're in the area. Okay. I've eaten there a couple times now, and I really enjoyed it. Give the pizza a chance. Love the meat lovers there. We're still begging you to have a gluten-free crust so I get Maureen back out there again. We're working on a cauliflower crust. It's in production. The product is there. I know. Okay. Other folks out there, I'm doing a series on concerns. So I know you have a concern about the Baltimore Ravens because I put it out there and I got 17 different concerns in 10 minutes. And I heard the best concern ever that came up and is going to be the one I record sometime today or tomorrow. And that's on, we're not going to be able to enjoy the season because expectations are too high. That's the concern about the 2025 Ravens. And it's a first world problem, but yeah, it's a good one to have. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. But Vas, as always, thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time on Friday Morning GM.